There comes a moment in a man's life when he sees clearly. Not in victory, not in passion, but in silence. It's when her eyes lose their light, when her words no longer carry warmth. In that silence, you realize respect has left the room before love did. Respect is the foundation of every bond. Without it, love is a house built on sand, destined to collapse. The truth is, you cannot beg for respect, and you cannot bargain for it. You must claim it. And sometimes claiming it means choosing distance over presence, absence over pleading. Today, we'll talk about the power of walking away. 1. The fear of letting go. What if I lose her forever if I walk away? I've heard those words whispered by men who felt their world was crumbling. One of them was Jordan, a young man in Silicon Valley. He poured himself into coding lines of brilliance, chasing the dream of building the next great app. But when it came to love, he gave every ounce of his time to her, every late-night thought, every spare breath, every piece of himself. He believed devotion was measured by how much of himself he surrendered. When she left, he panicked. He thought begging would bring her back, that proving his love harder would erase the distance. But instead he chose silence. He walked away. And weeks later, she called, not because she missed the dinners or the late-night gifts, but because she missed the man who finally stood steady in his own worth. That is the paradox of walking away. It does not guarantee she will return, but it guarantees something far more important, that you will return to yourself. To the man you were before you forgot your own gravity. To the man she once respected, and the man you must learn to respect again. So, when you're too clingy. Clinginess is love twisted by fear. It is not born of tenderness, but of the terror that if you loosen your grip even slightly, the person you love will slip away forever. And in that fear, you begin to smother the very flame you are desperate to keep alive. Take Eric, a college student in Chicago. He was talented, bright, and full of life. He loved basketball and the rush of the game with his friends on a cracked neighborhood court. He had a gift for painting. His professors said his canvases carried a raw kind of beauty, colors that spoke louder than words. But when he fell in love, all of that began to fade. He skipped practice, leaving his teammates shaking their heads when he didn't show up. His easel gathered dust in the corner of his dorm room. He even dropped a class he loved, telling himself he needed to spend more time with her. And at first she smiled at his devotion, flattered by his undivided attention. Every text answered instantly, every invitation accepted, every night spent by her side. But soon the sweetness turned heavy. What once felt like admiration began to feel like surveillance. She noticed the way he hovered, the way his world collapsed into hers, the way the man she had admired, a vibrant soul who carried his own passions, was vanishing. What was left was a shadow orbiting around her every move, asking silently for reassurance she no longer wanted to give. That is the cruel truth about being too clingy. What you intend as love becomes a kind of suffocation. And when a woman feels she cannot breathe, respect is the first thing to die. For Eric, the turning point came not in a fight, but in a quiet evening when he realized he could no longer recognize himself. His brushes were untouched. His laughter with his friends had been silenced. He had traded all of it for the illusion of closeness and lost both himself and her respect in the process. So he walked away. Not in anger, not as punishment, but as an act of mercy for himself. He picked up the paintbrush again, let color return to his hands. He joined his friends on the court, sweat and joy mixing under the Chicago sun. He breathed without needing permission. And when she saw him again, she didn't see the desperate shadow she had grown weary of. She saw the man she had first admired, alive, independent, whole. And in that moment her respect returned. Because sometimes walking away is not about leaving her. It is about returning to yourself. 3. When you're overbearing. Love can be fierce. Love can be loyal. But sometimes love wrapped too tightly becomes something else entirely, control. And control, no matter how tender its disguise, always feels like chains. Tom knew this better than most. A Marine, he had returned home to Florida after months of deployment overseas. His wife had waited for him with the kind of faith only distance can test. When he stepped off the plane, he held her as if he'd never let go again. He promised himself that nothing, no war, no distance, no unseen danger would ever take her from him. But the battlefield leaves its mark. For months he had lived by discipline, by knowing where his men were, what they were doing, how safe they were at every second. That habit followed him home. His love for his wife was true, but it began to take the shape of questions. Where are you going? Who will be there? When will you be back? He needed constant updates, constant reassurance, constant proof that she was safe and his world was intact. At first she softened, thinking it was just his way of adjusting back to normal life. But slowly she began to feel watched instead of loved. Each text she didn't answer quickly enough became a point of tension. Each night out with friends became a quiet argument. The walls of their home, once a place of comfort, began to feel like the walls of a cage. One evening, after yet another fight that left them both exhausted, Tom saw it clearly. He wasn't protecting her. He wasn't cherishing her. He was caging her. And the man who had sworn to defend freedom was now stealing hers. So he walked away. Not forever, but long enough to breathe. He packed a bag and moved into his brother's guest house down the road. Alone, he faced his fear, learning to separate love from control. She, in turn, felt her lungs fill again, remembering the freedom that had first drawn her to him. Months later, when they sat together again, it wasn't as captor and captive. It was as partners, equals. Two people choosing each other freely, not clinging out of fear. Walking away for Tom wasn't abandonment. It was the reset button. The only way to save not just his marriage, but himself. 4. When she disrespects you. Disrespect is quieter than betrayal, but it cuts just as deep. It starts with small dismissals, little jokes at your expense, the casual shrug when you share your dreams. At first you let it go. You tell yourself she doesn't mean it. You convince yourself that endurance is love. Michael, a young lawyer in Boston, knew this story all too well. He worked long hours in courtrooms where words could shape destinies. His ambition burned bright, his victories hard-earned. But at home that fire was mocked. His girlfriend laughed at his late nights, rolled her eyes when he spoke of his cases, and once, on the night of his biggest trial win, she left him waiting alone at a restaurant table for two. Still, he stayed. He believed that if he was patient enough, forgiving enough, she would see his worth. But the truth is brutal. The longer he stayed, the more her respect withered. What she once admired in him became invisible because he refused to demand the dignity he deserved. Then one day he walked away. No dramatic speech, no slammed doors. Just silence. Weeks later, when his name appeared in the paper for another victory in court, she called. But he didn't answer. Because by walking away, Michael had already spoken the loudest truth. His dignity was not for sale. 5. Why walking away works. Why does walking away carry such power? Because absence has a way of carving space where truth finally echoes. Words can be debated, tears can be dismissed, arguments can be twisted, but silence leaves no room to hide. It forces the heart to listen. Take Jake, a musician in Nashville. For months he played his guitar late into the night for a woman who loved the sound of his devotion more than the man behind it. She toyed with his time, keeping him dangling between promises and excuses, between hope and disappointment. He chased her still, believing that if he played enough songs, she would one day choose him fully. Then one evening Jake stopped. He put down the guitar. He stopped calling, stopped waiting by the phone. The music that once filled her apartment with warmth vanished. And in that silence, she felt something far louder than any melody. She felt the weight of his absence. The songs were never just about love, they were about him, the man who gave them life. Without him, the silence stung. That is why walking away works. It shifts the story. You are no longer the man begging at her doorstep, straining for scraps of attention. You become the man who understands the gravity of his own footsteps, the man who does not beg to be valued but commands it by the sheer act of choosing himself. 6. Walking away for you. Never forget this. Walking away is not truly about her. It is about you. About the man you return to when you finally stop living in someone else's shadow. Think of David, a father in Colorado. When his marriage ended, he looked around and realized his world was a collection of her choices, her hobbies, her favorite places. He had built his life like a house furnished only with her belongings. When she left, he was left with empty rooms. For weeks he wandered through silence. No laughter, no warmth, just the ache of absence. But one morning, he pulled on an old pair of hiking boots, the ones he had forgotten in the back of his closet. He took his young son by the hand, and together they climbed into the Rockies. The air was thin, the sky impossibly wide, and for the first time in years he breathed as himself. His son laughed at the wind, his cheeks red with cold, and David felt a flicker of joy that belonged to no one else, not to her, not to the past. That is what walking away gives you. Not just respect, but life. The kind of life that fills your lungs, steadies your step, and makes your presence undeniable. Because a man who lives fully, who walks in his own rhythm, is magnetic in a way no desperation could ever be. Walking away is not losing love. It is reclaiming yourself. Closing. Walking away is not surrender. It is not cowardice. It is the clearest expression of strength you can show in love. So if you find yourself in a place where her respect has faded, remember, you don't win it back by clinging tighter. You win it by stepping back, letting the silence speak, and filling your own life with meaning. Because in the end, the greatest respect you can ever earn is not hers. It's the respect you reclaim for yourself. So tell me, where in your life do you need to walk away, not in anger but in dignity? Share your story below. And if you're ready to keep learning, watch the next video. The 7 things women notice instantly about a man. Until then, remember this. Love without respect is hollow. But the man who walks away with honor never leaves empty-handed.